take me to that Saturday night. You're not out on a date that night.
Mm-mm.
You're at home. And you have... why are you laughing?
I'm laughing because there were lots of nights I wasn't on a date. But okay, that's another story.
It's a Saturday night. And you are going to pick up this book. It has not yet won a Pulitzer Prize.
Right.
It is written by Toni Morrison. You had read other things that she had written, and it's beloved, and you began to read. What happened?
Well, what happened to me, I think, is what happens to a lot of people, Charlie, when they start reading Toni Morrison. You read the first page, first sentence, 124 was spiteful, full of a baby's venom.
Yeah.
Then you read that again. 124 was spiteful, and then you continue to read the paragraph trying to figure out what is 124, what is spiteful, what is a baby's venom. And I read several pages and then went back to 124 was spiteful, full of a baby's venom. I did what a lot of people do when they're reading Toni Morrison, is you keep going over the words.
Yeah.
You have to, it's like spoon feeding yourself the words, because I don't know a writer who's richer in terms of using the language. And actually, the first time I called her up that night...
So just stop for a second.
Okay,
so you're reading, you're caught up in this, and you're struggling with it, but it speaks to you.
Speaks to me.
It says something.
Yeah.
What does it say?
Well, by the time I'm on the second page, and Sethe is running through the chamomile, and she's running through the chamomile and, being irritated on her legs with the chamomile, and sees the trees in the meadow, and is reminded of the past, of Sweet Home, and the men hanging from the trees, and then goes to wash the chamomile from her legs and comes around the corner and sees Paul D. In my mind, Paul D., just the way he was described, that was Danny Glover. And I felt from the very first time reading it, when you create images in your imagination when you're reading a book, I felt that I was Sethe.
You saw it that night, that Saturday night reading the book.
I saw it.
You, Sethe is Oprah.
Yeah.
Or Oprah is Sethe.
Oh, Oprah is Sethe.
So
and
then
Paul D. was Danny Glover.
Then you pick up the phone, and you call Toni. You find her.
Find her.
Wherever she is, at Princeton or wherever she is. And you say what?
I say, I just finished reading your book, Beloved. And I don't know what to say. I'm calling you because I want you to help me understand what was that. I said I'm stunned and I'm overwhelmed and I don't have words, and I never read a book like that before. I thought I knew something about, Black history, but I never felt like that before. And she said, oh my, well, I did good, didn't I? Yeah, I did well. She said, I did well. So yes, you did. And so we proceeded to talk about the images in the book and what Sethe meant and who was beloved. And I asked some of the same questions that people are now asking me after seeing the movie. And where did she go? And what does that mean? And Toni said the same thing that I'm now saying. Why do you need to know? Why do you need to know where she went?
Just go with it.
Yes, go with it. Go with it. Which is the experience of any Toni Morrison novel, is that she writes like life is. And so you have to open yourself up to life and not go in with your own preconceived idea of what the experience of Reconstruction might be, or the experience of, a little girl growing up in the South might be. Nobody writes like her. And I came away with a personalized view, impression, idea of what it was like to live in that time, what it's like to fight within yourself to try to love again as you reconstruct your life. I came away with, for the first time, understanding, oh, that's what Reconstruction was. In history, my impression always had been that it was a time, it was an era, and there was a time where Black people were allowed to be in Congress, and it was a very short time. But life was well and fine, and people were dressing and rebuilding their lives. I wasn't aware of the day-to-day domesticity and struggle of what that would mean to reconstruct your existence.
And the loss of control.
And what it means to come out of a loss of control and to be able to do that. And no therapy, no counseling. You have to find within yourself and within your own heart, as Baby Suggs, so eloquently preached, that your heart is the prize, and be able to put that together for yourself.
Did you mention the word movie to Toni in this conversation?
Yes, I did. I said, and what's ironic about it is that I had no idea how you make a movie. I had been in The Color Purple and just was, felt glorified to be able to be there. And had no idea how you make a movie. But I felt that it should be a movie. I immediately felt, I wasn't 20 pages in and felt like, because that's how it appeared in my mind as a movie, scene after scene after scene after scene. Wasn't sure how you do it. So I mentioned the fact that I wanted to do a movie. And Toni sounded like she threw back her head in one of those.
Another one.
Yes. Oh, you foolish girl.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
What do you know?
Yeah.
This is
No,
not
oh,
television.
ridiculous. How do you... She said, well, how do you plan to do that? And as only Toni Morrison can. And I was like, well. So I thought that meant she wanted to be involved.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, but you could help me. Oh, don't. I'm not like trying to, cut you out of the deal. She goes, oh, no, I don't want to help. That isn't what I do. She said, that isn't what I do. And besides, I do not want these people in my house again, she said. Which is the first time
That's interesting.
Yes, I realized that writers, and a lot of them, and Toni, of course, included, it's like visitation. It's like being inhabited yourself and having all those characters up in your house. She said, I don't want these people in my house again.
Some 10 years later, you get a script, and you send it to Jonathan Demme.
Right.
Saying, take a look at this.
And he read it and called. January 6th. I call my office, I get a message from Jonathan Demme. And I had just vaguely, we had been going down a list of people yet to send it to in this whole 10-year process. So I called Kate Forte in my office in Hollywood. I said, Jonathan Demme has called me. What do you think this means? And she said, well, I sent him the script. What did he say? I know he hasn't said anything. He hasn't said anything to me yet. So you know what the first call was? First question was?
What?
Did I plan to play Sethe young? And I said, well, I never knew, I don't think of her as young or not young. She's just Sethe. How young is she when she's young? And he said, I think she's about 16. And I said, not enough gauze, Vaseline in Hollywood for me to play 16, unless you're going to put the camera in Cleveland. So I guess I had to give up.
And we'll be filming in Maryland.
In Maryland. You put the camera in Cleveland, I could play 16. Otherwise, no. And
said no.
That was his condition of because I think he was worried that I was, first of all, attached to the film, but also the idea that I was going to try to take control of it and, probably boss him around. So that was hard for me to give up at first because I had always imagined myself running through the wilderness, myself as Sethe, running through the woods.
So Jonathan leaves you and he says, trust me, trust me.
Jonathan leaves me and says, trust me. And the interesting thing about that, Charlie, is that there had been other directors in this 10-year period. Everybody says, trust me. I think it's a Hollywood thing.
Yeah, right.
Do you think it's hard for you to trust someone?
Leave the meeting and they say,
trust me, be okay.
Trust me,
Yeah.
trust me, be okay.
I'll take care of you.
Don't worry about it. Listen.
That's right.
It'll be fine. And every single time that happened, I would leave the meeting and I would say to Kate, my producer, I'd say, what do you think? What do you think? I don't know. What do you think? I don't know. Was she okay? I don't know. What do you... And the difference is when somebody says, trust me, and it's right. You don't have to ask anybody. That Jonathan was at my house when we had that meeting, and he got up to go to the bathroom down the hall, and Kate and I were sitting at the kitchen table, and when he left, we went...
This is it.
Yes, we danced. We call it our Jonathan jig. He comes back in, and we're like this, sitting at the table. The interesting thing, too, is that he didn't say yes immediately, but it looked like it might be a yes. And the next day I called Kate, and she said, dare we hope that life could be this good. Dare we hope? I said, I'm hoping. It sounds like it's going to be a yes. And once he said yes, things started moving immediately.
Tell me about absorbing the role and what responsibility you felt, because I want to talk about that remarkable trip that you took with Anthony Cohen, who set up from the Underground Railroad, who set up an experience for you that had to be jarring to your bones.
Yes, and didn't question what Jonathan questioned and what Toni questioned, whether or not I could lose the persona of Oprah Winfrey. I didn't.
You
I,
knew that from the
yeah,
day one.
Yeah, because I know inside myself I'm an actor. I always wanted to be an actress, and I know that I can do that. And my concern, my worry for myself, because I love the idea of acting, have always wanted to be an actress, but kind of diverted with a little day job of a talk show. And
But we like that day job.
and so my concern always is, and I've had friends who are in the business who say, you need to be in a play, you need to do summer stock for the summer, you need to keep the chops moving, you have to work the muscle. And what always inevitably happens to me is something comes up with the television show, I'm too busy to do, plays, and because I have a full-time job. And so my concern was, would I be able to do justice to Sethe? Would I be able to tell the truth for her, allow her to come through me? Jonathan asked me the first night we met, how do you plan to do her? And I said, well, I don't even think you can act that. I don't have any, method for relating to my pain or connecting to my pain in terms of what she experienced. Because the difference between being born now and being born then was hope. I don't know how
you have hope today. You didn't have hope then.
You didn't have hope then. I don't know how you portray a sense of hopelessness. I don't know how you would do that. How do you go to that place that is hopeless? And that's why I called Anthony Cohen for the Underground Railroad experience. Initially, I called him, Charlie, because I thought I wanted to experience the physicality of the running, because I knew at that time that Lisa was actually going to be doing the running through the woods. But I wanted to feel for myself so that I would have that energy inside. I would have that as a referral in my brain to what's it like to run at night, directionless. What's it like to be given a destination in the middle of the night and not even knowing where that is? How do I do that? And so I called him because I had seen him he was on my show, and I'd read an article about his Underground Railroad treks. And I wanted to experience it physically. In the process, Anthony Cohen set up this whole, what I now call it, underground improv situation, where I was taken into the woods and I was blindfolded and I was left there with all of these other, people impersonating slave masters and a slavery environment. And there are some people who, and I can understand why, would question, well, why would you need to do that? Or was that really necessary? And, you know that you're Oprah Winfrey ultimately. Of course you do. You know that when you're acting too. But it's just to I wanted to try to put myself in touch with feelings that go beyond your imagination, and to be able to have a tactile view of it, tactile experience of it.
And it helps you go from awareness to knowing, to feeling, to having...
Well, it might have not done that. It just that I'm very fortunate that did happen to me in the process of being, of an exchange with the guy who was impersonating the slave master. He had said something to me. He doesn't probably even know that he did that for me. But I was, doing my whole impersonation, blindfolded under the tree, and I said, "You don't understand. I've been brought here. I'm a free woman. If you just let me get my free papers, I think I could make this okay." And he says, "You don't think nothing, gal. You don't think nothing, because you belong to me. You think nothing." And then he left. I could hear the horse's hooves going off, and I was left to sit under the tree for a long time and just kind of contemplate what had happened, this whole exchange. And I was just sitting there to myself thinking, oh, well, all of this is very interesting. And as I let...
So it was still an exercise.
Yeah, it was an exercise at that point, until the beauty of it is that they let me sit long enough. They let me sit long enough under that tree that I started to just come apart in a way that I never had been in touch with, experienced, nor do I want to experience again. The words, the language of "you think nothing, gal." At first I sat there and I just kind of started to rock to myself and humming to myself. And somewhere the song came to me, and before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. And I'm just rocking. That song came up, and I just fell apart because I
broke down.
Because I knew what that meant. I knew. I know that song. I've sang that song. Song was a part of the whole civil rights movement, the whole freedom, and have many times said the words in church, many churches. But I knew what it meant instead of like an intellectual understanding of what it was. That's why Sethe would be able to take the life of her child. That's why Margaret Garner, for whom the character Sethe is based on, did take the life of her child. Because before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. And it brought just clarity to the words that Sethe later says to Paul D. in the movie. School teacher ain't got 'em. They ain't at sweet home. And I understood and was trying to find in my own self a way to understand. How could she do that? Because even as I finished the book, I felt in many ways as Paul D. did. I was still judging Sethe, loved her, but still judging her, feeling as Paul D. did, as he says in the film. There could have been some other way. There could have been some other way. And now I know what way, Paul D. Let my children go back there, go back to sweet home with school teacher. So she did what many mothers did. She did what women who were, in death camps in Auschwitz and all over Europe, once they realized that they were going to the gas chambers, some would smother their babies rather than let Hitler win. She did what many mothers in the Middle Passage did when they realized where we're going to is nothing but a dark place, jump overboard with their babies. She did what Margaret Garner later did after Margaret Garner, for whom this character is based on, was taken back to the plantation in Kentucky because she could not be tried as a murderess because her children weren't considered human. Margaret Garner was taken back and then sold downriver, jumped overboard with her other daughter, who would have been Denver. And the child drowned, and she was then sold.
So she
died of typhoid fever.
To viewers of this film, you say this act is an act of love and sacrifice. A woman takes her child because she loves her child. She took her children. It's not an act of sacrifice in 1998. It's not an act of sacrifice in 19... You grasp the ultimate horror of a mother having to take her child.
Yes. And you can't even compare it. I had a friend who wanted to write an article about it, saying, well, there have been other mothers who take their children. You can't compare it unless the mothers are in the same circumstances. Unless you're walking to the gas chamber. You're on your way there. That's where you're going. Or the slave master has you. He's outside your door, and he's going to take your children. And you know that he thinks that your children, they are perceived as animals, perceived and treated as such. And in Sethe's mind, and in the minds of many women who jumped overboard, who smothered their children, who took their lives and the lives of their families, it was a living death. And she chose not to experience a living death because she believed that there was life on the other side. She believed that and said, I'm taking my children to the other side.
You have memorabilia about slavery.
Yes, sir.
It's in your trailer. What does it do for you? How does that help you as Sethe?
It's like a grounding wire it was for me. It was a way of me every day bringing myself to the realization that I wasn't doing this by myself. I've said that, when you look at those names on the ledger with their age, 37 years old, $950, right next to how many mules, how many pieces of furniture, how many teacups, how many plows, you recognize in a way that no history book can really show you, I think, that it wasn't 150 years ago when it was legal to own people in America. People that I'm a descendant of. My great-great-grandmother was a slave and was owned And her worth and value is measured against that of the plow, that of how many sheep, how many chairs, nightstands.
And in the end, you don't own your own life, and therefore you can't have hope.
Well, what became just so clear to me, that it was like rising out of the ashes, and I'm not by any means trying to say that, listen, I have one of the, if not the best life, certainly a glorious life I've been able to create with the great creator for myself. And, don't feel guilty about it, nor question it, or any of the things that you hear a lot of people who have success do. I feel blessed. I never really knew how powerful I was, though, and how powerful all people are. And when I say that, I don't mean powerful by the definition that people give to power, that society gives to power, by all this, obsession that we have in this country with lists. And even though I make a number of lists, most powerful this, they bother me because at some point in time, if you're on the list, you got to be off the list. You rise too high, then people try to then knock you down. So that's all external, other people's view of who you are and what you do. But what I came away from was a sense of true, authentic power and understanding for the first time that all of these years, even in the celebration of Black History Month, which has always made me feel like, what is that? Black History Month. I hear the little 30-second spot on television. Harriet Tubman, founder of the Underground Railroad. Benjamin Banneker invented the first, and it always has irritated me. I didn't know until this beloved experience why. It's because we're measuring ourselves against the wrong yardstick. Who did what, who built, who made, who created is almost insignificant compared to who stood. Who did not go crazy in the face of a world that said you have no right to exist. What it takes. I mean, I had to go to that place inside Sethe and carry that with me in every scene. The place, for example, when Sethe says, I hear my boys laugh a laugh I never heard before. First I get scared, then I realize if they laugh that hard till it hurt, be the only hurt they have all day. When I first read that in Toni Morrison's book, those were words to me. I thought I understood them. I felt pain for her, empathy for that. It is the process of creating the character that I realized, the psychology, the spiritual psychology of the words. When she hears her boys laugh a laugh, or when she arrives on Bluestone Road, and never before had I loved my children that big. It looked like I can fit them all. I understood that the psychology is, Charlie, every time she would go to Mr. Garner's house and work in the big house, or go to work in the fields, she left knowing that when she came back, her children might not be there. She did, and every slave mother did. Every slave mother and father, if he was allowed to live in the house. What is it like to live in the space in yourself every day where this may be the day I come home and my children aren't there? Sojourner Truth had 13 children sold off into slavery. 13 separate times she comes home and her children are gone. That's really what the words mean. That's what the words mean. So when I hear them laugh a laugh, first I get scared. That's why when Baby Sug says, let the children come and let your mothers hear you laugh, it's because for once after freedom, mothers were allowed to hear the sweetest sound any parent knows, and that is the laughter of their children. But when you're in bondage, when your life does not belong to you, laughter is not even yours to own. Laughter is not yours to own. And that's what I came away from, understanding how powerful that is. Because if you come from that, if you can come from that, people who had nothing, they did not even own themselves, to be able to look inside yourself. As Maya Angelou says in her poem to our grandmothers, they heard the words swirling in the winds of history. They heard the names. She heard the names: nigger, bitch, creature, ape, baboon, whore, hot tail, thing, it, animal. She heard the words, and she said, "But your description does not fit my tongue, for I have a certain way of being in this world." What it takes to hear the words, to hear the language, to hear everything outside yourself tell you you have no right to exist, you have no right to be, and for you to say, "But I believe I'm better than this." That's extraordinary. That is who I am. That is where I come from.
How will this change you in the way you live your life?
Well, it has made me more aware that my life and no one's is all their own. That you, in the words of Toni Morrison, you've been bought and paid for. Your crown has been paid for, so put it on your head and wear it. That none of us are really acting alone, that you are a product of what has happened, all that has happened, not just the history that we choose to acknowledge, not just the names that we want to put in the history books, but we're all of that. We're all of that. And the strength of that past allows you to stand wherever you are today in your life, and that your awareness and connection to that does make you more powerful. Because, as Toni says, and as Maya says too, the fact that others have paved the way for you, regardless of how your great-grandparents immigrated to this country or what their position was, sacrifices have been made for you. And so I stand in awareness and consciousness of that on a daily basis.
You, in Mississippi, had hope somehow.
Yeah.
Why did you have hope? Because there's a story that you tell. I think your grandmother was, I'm going to teach you these things which you will be able to do. How to wash clothes, how to make soap, how to do whatever these things
Same
are.
iron pot we used in Beloved. With the big black iron pot. I saw my grandmother through a screen one day.
And she's going to teach Oprah to do this because
you're going to need to know how to do this.
You're going to need to know how to do this. And you were walking away saying,
"No, Grandmama, I don't think so.
Because I'm going to be
I'm going to be somebody."
Where does that come from?
Same place that I don't know. I do not know. In my intellectual mind, I think it's the same thing that makes somebody hear all the names, hear the master say you are an animal, and somewhere inside yourself you go, "But I don't feel like one." Yeah. I see that rooster, and I see myself, and I think I'm different. Yeah. I think I'm better than that rooster. I don't know what that was, Charlie, to be honest with you. I just, all around me, people would be saying, "Oh, you better learn how to treat white folks, and you better learn how to act, and you better not." I just never, and we didn't even have television. So I didn't even know, I didn't even have, and the one of two times I did see TV at my Aunt Susie Mae's house, the Little Rascals had buckwheat. It was the only role model at the time growing up. So I don't know what that is. Nature. I don't know what that is. Genes, something that says, and Charlie, I just, I'm going to go back to Mississippi, and on the land where I was born, I want to start a center for young girls and, women who are trying to get out of abusive relationships, and build that on the land where I was born. Because I was there recently, and it really broke my heart, but was so, I couldn't believe how some people right up the road from me literally have not moved from the porch. That just like time just stood still. They haven't moved. And so I think of my life sometimes, I always think, we're all participants co-creating our life. But then I went back to my hometown recently and saw some people, they just literally have not got up on the porch. They've gotten older.
But are they unhappy? And are we measuring them by your standard or my standard because they haven't left the porch?
Well, I think life is about leaving the porch.
Yeah, well, so do I.
I'm not here to judge the porch.
No, I'm not. But I used to go through this with I would want things for people that were friends of mine in my hometown. And I realized you can't project onto them your desire to be on that train that's going somewhere that you don't know. And the fact that you refuse, or I refuse to let anybody define who we are and what we're about.
Right.
We had different kinds of opportunities. At the same time, I at some point said, I'm not here about making a judgment about their choice.
Right. I'm not here to make a judgment about it. What I'm here to do is say, what can I do
if to give you an option, to
Right.
give you a choice if
Yeah.
you want.
What can I do? What can I do to help to keep you from being enslaved in your own mind? Because that's really the only reason you're still sitting on this porch. That might be a judgment, but I do believe that to be true, just from what I've seen. So what can I do? Right. Not put it off on the other person.
Yeah.
What can I do to make that better for you, to create some options so that you can see differently, so that you too can believe, in the power of your own vision.
And if you're there because you have no hope, let me tell you where hope can come from.
Yes, and I say this too. Mississippi, at the time I was born, was considered the most racist state in the United States. It had the highest number of lynchings per state, of any state at the time. But I was born in 1954, Brown versus Board of Education.
1954.
1954, which meant all the colored people at the time, when that Brown versus Board of Education became law, the possibilities changed. Just what we thought could be possible for a colored child changed. The dialogue, the languaging about ourselves changed. Things could be different in 1954 than they had been in 1955 and 53 and 50 and years prior. There was just a sense of hopefulness.
It was a watershed moment.
Yes, it was a watershed moment in that year.
Has there always burned in you, they said about Lincoln, ambition burned like a hot furnace within him.
Mm-hmm.
Could we say that about you?
I could say that. I'm not trying to compare myself to Lincoln, but I can
but
definitely
it's
say.
the notion of it, people, you.
Right, the notion that I can be better for myself and I can help other people to do better because I'm no different than other people. If I can do it, then anybody can. And that is whether I'm running a marathon, whether I lost 85 pounds and can get up and run a marathon, or whether I can reach a point in my life where I recognize that television is the most powerful tool for communication that there is right now. I know lots of people are computer literate, but still there's nothing like the one-on-one extension, my voice to the voices of the people who are listening right now. That energy. And I, for years, have been very fortunate to be a part of television. When I finished doing Beloved, I decided that I wanted to be involved with more than just doing television. That what I came away from, this sense of power, that something was bigger than myself, is that I wanted to not be used by television, even though it has done very well by me. And I've been very lucky, but I'm in a business that pays you, Fortunately, I get paid for being myself. It's extraordinary. I'm as amazed as anybody else is at that possibility. But I thought, well, okay, first of all, this happens to you. You turn 40. If you got any sense, you try not to make the same mistakes you did when you were 30. And how do I now take this life that I've been given and use it to a greater advantage? How do I now, provide information that I think can help other people see themselves, see their lives, see the world in a way that lifts us up, that helps us to create a higher vision for ourselves? How can I do that? And that is what I believe is my calling. I realize in the process of doing that, you're going to get criticized by a lot of people who think, just do television, because that's all it is. Just do television. But that's not my business. That's not my concern. My life is not about just doing. At some point, everybody's is, because you're just trying to survive. But I think the true benefit of having wealth and having, this much attention is that you can then use it. I shall never forget 10 years old watching Sidney Poitier receive the Academy Award. And what that did for me. I was sitting on a linoleum floor in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, babysitting my half-sister and brother. And when I saw that limousine pull up, first of all, and he get out of here's a colored man getting out of a limousine. And then he won. I hadn't seen Lilies of the Field, didn't know what that was, but he won. He won. And I thought, a colored man did that. A colored man did that. That said to me, it's possible. It's possible. If a colored man did it, a colored woman could do it. Maybe I could. Maybe I could.
Do you think about that now, that Beloved is?
No, I don't know. I was 10, Charlie. I was 10.
Yeah, but we've established that ambition burns. I mean, you have to think now, This movie, you take Sidney Poitier, this man who was the handsomest man, who carried himself with more dignity than you'd ever seen anybody, and he won.
He won.
So he had everything going there.
He won.
And he still does. I mean, he's in David Lee's View, and I just saw him, and I mean, he still has all that
he,
sort of. I mean, he walks like
he still makes my knees buckle.
Age doesn't
Yeah.
sometimes. Beloved is for you the single greatest achievement of your life.
Mm-hmm. In terms of a physical accomplishment.
Something you accomplished, other than your life.
Yes.
Your life is first, and then.
Yeah. But you know what? It's interesting, Charlie, that you would say that. That's good. That makes me think this. Is it a single? Beloved, to me, feels like it's a part of the flow of my life. It doesn't feel like it's something that happened separate.
It's not like you went and made a movie and then
it
go back to your life.
No, it doesn't. It feels like it is a part of me and my life.
Is it probably good that it took 10 years to get it made?
Yes,
because you were at a place that you could do it better, bring more to it, invest more, inhabit more.
That's why you Charlie Rose. You are so smart. It's true. 10 years ago it would have been a different film. 10 years ago, you know, I might have settled on someone who would not have done for me what Jonathan Demme did for me. He forced me to not be sentimental. Every single day in filming, you know, my hardest lessons came from exactly what Toni had feared, is not being emotional. And many a days, I mean, I have favorite Jonathan notes. I know he was just on here, but yeah, my favorite Jonathan note is one day I'm in this chair, Sethe is in the chair, and the camera comes up behind my head, and Beloved's going, bad Sethe, bad Sethe. This is just before Denver opens the window and she sees the food, and I was breathing in the chair. So Jonathan keeps yelling, you know, he's outside with the megaphone going, give me less, it's still too much. And I finally yell back, Jonathan, I'm only breathing. And he says, you know how you're doing? Just do the, no, huh. Okay.
A better breathe.
A better breathe.
It is a mark of something in you. You went with him.
Yes.
I mean, you really, because there's a certain control element about you.
Well, I think, Charlie, that's a misunderstanding that people
I
have.
don't think so.
I think I just want things to go well. That's all.
In other words, if I'm interested in the product and I'm interested in the way it's done, it's only because I care about the end result. It's not because there's something in me believes
that I'm the only one who could do it.
Well, that I know best.
That I know best. Oh, truly not. And you can ask anybody that works for me. It's true. I have the perception, I guess. I don't know where that even comes from. I have the perception that I'm this big control freak, but really what I am
is
I try to surround myself with people who know more than I do about what they do. And that's why I was looking for somebody who I could, when they say, trust me, I really could.
I do too. I couldn't agree with you.
Yes.
You find people that you can trust. Because you don't want to worry about all those things. There's certain small things you want to worry about.
You can't do it all. Can't. So I trusted him, and listen, whenever there were creative differences, not even major ones, he always was right. Now the beauty of Jonathan,
always was right.
Always was right, and that's hard for me to say.
Which means that you were always wrong.
Wrong, yes. And there were a couple of times when I was wrong, and had to go and say, "I'm sorry, I was wrong," which is kind of hard.
Yeah, but you've gotten pretty far of trusting your own instincts.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, but
you bought Beloved before it was a
Pulitzer Prize.
And certainly before she won the Nobel Prize.
Correct. But when during the process of filming the movie, there were days when I thought, well, of course, there's this. Listen, I know Sethe better than anyone, but that's not true.
Toni knows Sethe better than anyone.
Toni knows Sethe better than anyone, and Jonathan had a different insight.
Right. Mm-hmm. If you look at Beloved, which is, as you say, part of your life, where is this life as you see it going?
Well, I love that. It's like therapy for me, if you ask that question. I don't know, Dr. Rose. I don't know. I feel this. I used to speak a lot. I used to call me preacher when I was in the 3rd grade, and I grew up being an orator.
I know.
And I remember speaking in Nashville when I was 22 and leaving to go to Baltimore, and one of the last things I said is, I don't know what the future holds for me, but I know who holds the future. I do believe that there is an ultimate life force, creator, divine intelligence. I call it God, but I think it can be called many things. And I believe that the purpose of your humanity is to try to connect yourself to that force, whatever you choose to call it. And I think there are many paths to that. And I try to stay in the field, in the God vibe, in that, whatever that is, to open myself up to be used, to be used. My prayer for a long, long time has been, how do I use myself? How do I use this life? How do I be used to be of service to myself, first of all, and then to people I love, my family, community? And how do I let my life force, be of service to the rest of the world?
Even though you've made something of it, you consider it a gift of what you have.
I consider the obedience the gift. You know, Maya says to me all the time that what she admires most about me is my obedience to the calling.
What does that mean?
It means that I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to listen and be obedient to the calling that's bigger than myself. You know.
But the calling is?
The calling is to use your life. Okay. The calling is, and how do you do that? For me, it's on television. I always thought the calling would be. That's why when you ask me the question, what is the future? What am I going to do? What does this mean? What does this life mean? Where's it going? If you'd asked me that question 25 years ago, I would have said fourth grade teacher. I'm going to be a great I'm going to be the best fourth grade teacher anybody's ever seen. I never expected to be in television, certainly never expected to be as successful in television as I've been. And so I try to open myself up to whatever the possibilities are. I mean, I pray, I meditate, I try to stay connected to the thing that's bigger than this ego, this personality.
How much of it is because, I mean, when you have said that this is a great time in my life. Mm-hmm. It is a splendiferous, whatever that means. Yeah. You've said that.
Yeah.
And you look at it and you say, man, I'm happy it happened to me, and man, I'm loving it, and I'm going to do something with it. Mm-hmm. How much of the fact that you got here seemingly so sane mm-hmm. is because of this self-examination that you do? I mean, nobody can ever accuse you of being the unexamined life.
No, they can't. Because I'm looking at it even today. As you ask me the questions, I think, oh, that's really interesting. I think most of it is. I think I can certainly attribute a lot of it to the fact that I'm constantly looking inside myself and trying to get better, trying to create another vision and allow my vision to be aligned with the vision of what I call the Creator. I don't know any other way to explain it than that. But I think everybody is examining. The problem is a lot of people don't listen to what the report is, what the examination report, when it comes back.
Or to the diagnosis.
The diagnosis.
They're not listening to the diagnosis.
When it comes back and says, you need to be less jealous, or you need to spend more time with your children, or you need to take a good long look at yourself. People don't want to hear that. I think that. And so I do it, and now...
Or they'll say, I'm not jealous of that SOB because he happens to have more of this, and this, than I do.
That's right, that's right.
Why would you think that I'm jealous of that person?
But you know, the thing about it is, and I know this is true too, that, you know, for anybody who achieves, and I find that for anybody who you achieve a certain level of notoriety and fame and stuff, then people start taking shots at you. I was reading something in the paper the other day about, you know, let the Oprah backlash begin, because people always have a vision of, first of all, themselves, whether they acknowledge that vision or not, and they also
What's the vision do you have for yourself?
have the vision for what they believe is possible for other people. And I never forget that I am still a black woman in America. And the vision for that, for a lot of people, is, you know, not as high as mine might be, or certainly not as high as God's vision for
Well, there's
me.
no limit on your vision for that, is it?
There's no limit.
There's no ceiling up there.
There's no ceiling. No ceiling. And I came away from the Beloved experience knowing... Reinforced by the fact that you are so good. That's exactly the word I was looking for. Reinforced by the fact that there is no ceiling. And, you know, if there are people who have trouble with that, then that's
their problem, not yours.
Yeah, it's their problem.
So what criticism is it that hurts the most, stings the deepest?
Well, I guess the criticism that I'm, you know, in all of this for myself. I can understand why it would appear that
she is, in fact, in love with seeing her face on every place that she can put it. She wants it in the movie. She wants to be the star. She wants to do the television show.
I hadn't heard
she
that
wants
one.
to do the movie.
I hadn't even heard that. But you know what? I did all of this. I admit. I mean, listen, I'm sick of seeing my face.
Yeah, but
on
I
all
know
the
this
covers.
is about making people come to see something that's
Yeah.
a labor of love for you, and that everybody,
And I
anybody who
thought-
doesn't do that,
Yeah, that's right.
it has
What is
no
interesting to
respect
me-
for their work.
Wait a minute. And what's interesting to me about it is, Tom Hanks was on the cover of Newsweek and GQ and People.
And they didn't say it about Hanks, did
That's-
they?
no,
Let Oprah do it.
Every other movie star does it, and it has been done for years. Because now this is the way you have to do it, and nobody said anything about them.
What does that say?
It says, "I'm still a black woman in America." That's what it says. To me, I mean, that's all I can. That's all I. Because why? What is the difference? So when you get, who does she think she is? Why does she think she can? What is, they don't say that about.
I thought you might say the following.
What?
They say that I'm too comfortable, that I have catered my life and done my business with white people rather than black people. Because you know that's not true, and you've only done your business where you had to go to do business.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard that.
Oh yeah, I've heard that. Oh, but that doesn't even. I'm not even fazed by that at all, because that's just not true. The thing about it, when you say criticism, the only way you can feel attacked is if there's some part of that you can own for yourself, and every person has to own that for him or herself. I mean, the fact that I'm on the cover of Vogue and was on the cover of Time at the same time, that was a pretty major thing. First of all, I'm a black woman. I'm 44 years old. I used to weigh as much as the heavyweight champion of the world, and now I'm on the cover of Vogue.
And you don't weigh as much as the heavyweight champion.
And don't weigh as much as the heavyweight champion of the world. And I'm on the cover of Time, and I didn't kill nobody. I'm not on there for some statistic about, crime.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's no scandal here.
There's no scandal. It's just, that is really extraordinary. Less than 150 years after slavery, you can be on the cover of Time. And
one of the most powerful people in America, and one of the most influential.
But
And you ought to take pride in that, because you.
But the thing is, too,
And you do.
you don't do, you don't do all of this because of the doing. Life is about trying to find a way to be more of who you are. So, I've been criticized lately by some people for using television as a way to change people's lives, because I just came out and said
I certainly hope you are.
Yeah, that I want to change people's lives. And there are a lot of people who then say, well, who does she think she is? I'm now being called evangelical and trying to sit up on my high horse and be the high priestess or whatever. Those are all titles, labels given by other people. I will continue to use television to change people, entertain people, make them laugh, make them hopefully see something different. The other day, a woman said on the air, who'd been grieving a long time about her daughter, and that therapist said something to her, and she said, I never thought of it that way before. That was a bingo moment for me. I mean, that is why I do TV, just to have somebody say, I never thought of it that way before. And so I say, critics say whatever they choose, but that is why I do TV.
Is the success of Beloved going to change the balance of where things are in terms of how you see it? You said in the beginning you most of all wanted to be an actor.
Yeah.
Now, do you become because of this?
No. I know where you're going.
You do?
I do this for a living. I know where you're going. I know where you're going. No, I felt just the opposite. No, I felt just the opposite. I thought...
You didn't say, I can do it?
No. I thought when I left here to go do Beloved, I thought that. And then during the process of it, I realized, how many times do you get to do this in your life?
Yeah. Anything that you don't have? I mean, the kids' business, children. You've got those two fabulous Cocker Spaniel.
Yes. Oh, gosh, Stephen's going to be so happy you said this.
Because he gave them to you?
Yes, because
it was his gift to you.
It was his gift to me.
Because he's away and he wants you to...
Yes.
All right.
And also,
is that it? Was that it? Or
it
you need something to nurture?
Well, all of that. That's what happens when you have animals. They touch a life force in you that you weren't aware of. That I hear people say happens when they have children, obviously. Yeah. Children
Everybody
is
I
much
know
stronger.
says that,
Yeah, children are stronger. But I don't have the desire to have children. I won't rule out adoption at some point, but I don't have the desire to have children. It's as simple as that. I don't have the desire, nor do I have what I think it would take to be the kind of mother you need to be in America today to raise kind, generous, creative children. You know, you need to spend time with them. So something has to give. I could not have this life working 2 shows a day and raise a child. Couldn't.
The only way I can ask you this question is do the following. I have a fabulous relationship.
Oh,
Fabulous.
I know where this is going.
Okay. I am not married and don't plan to get married because it works so well.
Does she know that?
Yes, she does.
Okay.
And
this
agrees.
ain't the place to be hearing it if you hadn't told her. Okay.
Is that where you are too?
Yes, and why can't people understand that? Why can't people just let that be? Why do I have to? And there was a time even when I was pressuring Stedman for engagement before he asked me.
Oh, you were pushing in saying, let's do
Well,
something.
that's before he asked me.
Yeah.
I was like, well, wait, well, am I a girlfriend or what? Well, what does this really mean? And what is it? It's because I felt the need to have, you know, societal approval. I had felt the need for somebody to say, yes, she's okay, you know, and yes, he really does want to be with her. And since this is what happened, Charlie, honest to goodness, and this question never comes up except in interviews, because Stedman and I, surprisingly enough, you would know this if you're in a relationship, you don't sit around talking about it. Should we not? You think we should? People are saying. It hasn't come up since in the back of a limousine leaving the Miami Book Fair when I was going to publish my autobiography. And Stedman says, when is that autobiography coming out? And I said, they say it's coming out September 12th, the week of September 12th. This was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And we had planned to get married on September 8th, which was my parents, my father and stepmother's wedding anniversary, and they'd had a really great marriage, so that's why I'd chosen that date. He said, I don't want to get married the same week your autobiography's coming out. I don't want to do that because then all the attention is you're going to be at the wedding and people are going to be asking you about the book. People are going to be, because I don't want that to happen. Yeah. It's just that book is going to cause so much whatever. And so he says, so we should postpone it if that is the definite date. And I said, okay.
In the world of having a great time, a splendiferous time, anything you want you don't have? Anything missing from this place?
Well, you know what?
And the capacity to empower others, which is what you are doing now, this sense of being able to be a co-creator for others.
Well, this is what I want. I want to continue to this is what I want. I want to be able to continue to use my life as a force, as an instrument to allow myself to experience the vision that God would have for me. Not just mine, but the vision that the Creator, the reason I really came here, the person, the entity that created me. I want to be able to use that. I want to blow it out. I want to blow it out so when I'm gone, people say, woo, she blew. She just blew it out. To do it all. And to do it with a sense of grace and a sense of, honor and humility, meaning knowing that, not to not be confident, but knowing that it's not the ego me, but it comes from the grace of God. And to be able to let other people see that in me and work for that for themselves. That's really all I want. That's really all I want.
Thank you for coming.
Charlie Rose! That's it.
Oprah for the hour. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.
That was great, Charlie.
This video raises questions, and I need for you to be extremely honest in the comments when answering them. And just so you know, I have 4 questions. Number 1, before this video, have you ever heard the name Toni Morrison? Number 2, have you ever wanted to write your story? Number 3, do you think your life would make a good movie? Number 4, do you think it was the right thing for her significant other to not marry her? Now, please be honest in the comments when answering these questions. Share this video with anyone you deem necessary. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.